Incoming.
All right, everyone, welcome back to From the Bunker. I'm your host, Eli. We have a guest with us today, our first female service member and our first commissioned officer. So, pretty sweet. And we have a lot to talk about today. She's had a really cool journey so far in her life. So, we'll get into several different things. Always remember, go to bunker-bros.com. If you buy anything from our shop, it's going to help us build this app for veterans. If you want to donate, you can do monthly, you can do a one-time. You'll get a receipt, tax-free donation. We are a nonprofit organization, so we appreciate all the help, and we'll get into it. So Riley Tejcek, she is currently in the United States Marine Corps. She is a captain. She's a logistics officer, and she's done a lot of really cool stuff. She is currently still on the USA bobsled team. That's pretty wild to be doing that while she's in the Marine Corps. Being active in the Marine Corps is no jokes. Let's get into what led you to, joining the Marine Corps, and what was your childhood like and all that.
My journey to the Marine Corps, I think, was a little bit different. Oftentimes you hear the legacy of military in someone's family, and that wasn't necessarily the case for me. My father was a professional baseball player and was very successful in athletics. And my mom is a businesswoman that came from the middle of Kentucky and just has absolutely made herself into who she is now. And growing up, because of that, we grew up in Indiana, so Midwest. I would always drive down and see American flags. Like, there's a lot of patriotism in the Midwest and friendly people and everything, but there's not a lot of military bases, especially in Indiana.
Yeah.
So I never saw a female in uniform actually ever. I think G.I. Jane, I joke, was like the only person that I saw. And I didn't want to shave my head. So I didn't really think that being in the military would ever coincide. However, my dad was my coach my whole life. And my dad loved military doctrine and relating that to athletics. Okay. So I played softball. Naturally, he was a baseball player. Softball was what I did. And that is the one sport that you fail majority of the time. So if you think about it, a good MLB hitter is hitting 300. Yeah. They're getting paid big bucks. That means they're failing 70% of the time. So that means the sport really matters on what's between your ears. And there's a lot at the time in the 2000s military doctrine that was coming out about like Navy SEAL mindset and, how the Marines and other people kind of like function and run and how they go to war, especially in that time of Iraq and Afghanistan. So my dad would take some of the leadership principles from these military sources and apply it into my softball journey and what that meant to be mentally tough and what it was like to go to war with an opponent, but also with yourself. So little did I know, it was like little sprinkles, little seeds of the military being planted. But other than that, zero desire on my radar. I got a softball scholarship when I was 15, 16 years old to George Washington University.
Nice.
Very young at the time. And I knew going to DC would open a lot of opportunity for me. And like I said, my mother was really hard on us about being academically successful. So going to George Washington was a great school. And I, like a lot of probably 18-year-olds, was like, I want to be a CIA agent and I want to work for the FBI and I want to chase down the bad guys and do super secret squirrel stuff. So naturally, I don't know what I was really thinking. It just sounded cool. So I got onto campus at George Washington University, and you're in the heart of DC. And 3 weeks into being on campus, I ended up meeting a Marine recruiter. At the time, I thought by accident. Due to my Christian faith now, I realized that was like divine intervention that the Lord had planned. Yeah. And I met a Marine recruiter. And he was 6'3" and handsome and fit and was a former athlete where he played football and baseball, which really impressed me. And we started just striking a conversation like a good recruiter does.
Yeah.
And he started telling me about what it was like to be a Marine. And at the time, only 4 to 5% at the time in 2015, officers were women. And he's like, yeah, Riley, they don't really look like you. They don't really act like you, but that doesn't mean there's not a place for you. And, you have to be extremely physically fit. And as a Division I athlete, you've been able to do that. You have to be able to lead. You've been captain before. You know what it feels like to do that. You're a Christian and you want to serve and be a servant leader. Like, this is the best place for it. Not to mention the opportunity, to be a part of the 1% of the population that serves and gives back. And I came to find out I wasn't going to be wealthy in money, even though I make plenty and I'm great, but I'm extremely wealthy in experience, relationship, and overall, like, pride for what I do and how I do it. So that was kind of my journey, a little bit unconventional. I went to officer candidate school for the platoon leaders course and then commissioned once I graduated college.
Okay. Nice. What did you major in?
I majored in political science and then I minored in history and I studied Russian because I didn't want to give up on that. Well, maybe I can do intelligence. And I was like, at the time in political science, was studying a lot about Russia and Ukraine, which
Mhm.
ironically, I was like, I think something's going to happen here. And I
Mhm.
wanted to have a good understanding of it to make myself useful for the Marine Corps. It was funny. I was talking to the Marine recruiter. I was like, how can I make myself more successful? Because I had one summer off because I was so young between officer candidate school. And he said, well, learn Russian or Mandarin. And I think he was kind of like, yeah, okay. And I was like, all right. So I studied Russian and that happened. So yeah,
Dang. I heard that's got to be kind of a hard language because the alphabet's very different, right?
it's so throaty. So even saying hello is здравствуйте. And it just is like throaty. Yeah, it's different.
Dang. It is an intimidating language to hear, I think.
Yes, and
Yeah.
they sound angry. Not like German sometimes
Yeah.
just seem mad.
Yeah, no doubt. So so you get in, did and you get into logistics. Did you have any other things you were interested in, or was that your top choice?
Absolutely was not my top choice.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a part of it. And again, I look back on my faith that I had a list and I was really confident in my list. And you have a lot of outside people, chiming in, you should do this, you should do that. People are talking about ground intel, which means you would go to the infantry course. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I'm good. To be honest, I wanted nothing to do with combat arms. That was me specifically. I really wanted Comstrat, public affairs. I really, really wanted. And then I still wanted the intelligence, MOSs, which there's a couple of those, which there's not a lot of spots for it. And a lot of people want them.
Yeah.
And then I was looking into some of the kind of smaller MOSs. I was really interested in air defense control.
Mm, it's a big one now.
Yeah, given drones and everything like that, it was really starting to pick up back in 2019. But again, all of my choices were the really small communities. And despite finishing really high in the first group, the basic school will rank you into thirds.
Okay.
So easy numbers, there was just under 300, but there's 300 of us. So the top 100, 101 to 200, etc. And so if they had three intel spots, your mind might go, oh, well, it should go to like the top three people, but they would do one from this tier, one from this tier, one from the bottom tier.
They're actually
So you're
thinking better than everyone else though, because they need like different backgrounds and skill sets and stuff everywhere.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So they didn't want to make certain MOSs the best officers who finished the top of the class. They're kind of trying to
Hmm.
even out the playing field. Super smart, besides for I'm in that top 100. I was, I believe, like top 30. But when it came down to these small MOSs, they were just grabbed left and right. I ended up getting my eighth choice, which was logistics. And let me tell you, that day was a very tough day for me. I was pissed. I wanted nothing to do with logistics. I was like, ain't no way this is happening to me. But it ended up being the biggest blessing. And again, you are a young lieutenant, not really knowing anything, only hearing what other people say about jobs and making assumptions. So to be honest, you don't really know. You think you know, and I wouldn't be where I am now if I would have gotten any of those other. So praise God, it all worked out. His plan was better than my plan, but at the time, it
Hmm.
sucked.
Yeah. It's hard in the military when you're not in control of your destiny, like very little.
Right,
um,
and that's where you got to make the most out of it.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like where am I gonna get stationed? Depending on, I only had a small choice at the end of infantry school, like was it four MOSs at the time, rifleman, assaultman, machine gunner, or mortars. And then they had LAV crew, LAV infantry. But, it's you're like, I don't know, am I gonna get what I want? Who knows?
Yeah.
So wow. So was your first duty station Camp Pendleton?
It was, and I will tell you, I got my number one choice in that. So let me tell you, I was like, No, I don't want logistics. But then we ranked where we wanted to go. And Southern California, I mean, San Diego, could you get any better than that? So
No.
I definitely was able to get Camp Pendleton, and I became an S4 officer as a second lieutenant, filling a captain's billet straight
Mhm.
away, which was a big deal. And so it's because I finished well that I was
Mhm.
able to walk into that position. Challenging at first as a lieutenant, being like, oh my gosh, I have massive responsibilities. But again, I really think that everything happened for a reason, and it was the biggest blessing because it threw me into leadership roles, and it threw me into like an amazing command structure where I got to be a ground logistics officer for aviation and see
Mhm.
the ACE and how that works, which not a lot of people get to see that side of the house. It all worked out. It was awesome. I at least got Camp Pendleton. Yes, I have logistics, but I got 3 years in Cali straight off the
Yeah,
bat. So we were winning.
I'm from a couple hours from there, out in I went to high school on the way to Vegas, if you ever drove there at all, but up in the high desert. And then,
Mm-hmm.
but I got stationed in 29 Palms, so it was 2 hours to Pendleton or 2 hours to 29 Palms for me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they
yeah.
tell you California for 29 palms.
And you're like, oh, that
You're in the
sounds cool.
desert.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'll tell you what's worse though, having been in the the army side now, Fort Irwin is worse if you ask me because it's farther from anything. It's like 30 minutes from the freeway in Barstow, which Barstow is a more boring town than 29 Palms even. Like,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
fair. That's
So
fair.
so you get there, you're thrown right into command basically, or at least an O3 slot,
So I was filling a captain's O3 slot as the S4 officer. So responsible for a lot,
right in the
which
deep
was
end.
interesting. You're right. I walked in and I'm sitting across 5 master gunnery sergeants, which most Marines will not meet as a lieutenant.
Right.
And the CO is lieutenant colonel, the XO is a major, and then all the other officers that I'm with, for the most part, were LDO captains, high warrant officers. And so, as a young lieutenant, walking into that room, you're just like, who are these people? Like, where did
Yeah.
they come from? But I worked at a Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron. So we had 5 different components to include avionics, maintenance, supply, ordnance, and our HQ. So a lot of really specialized MOSs, which is why we had really special, awesome people. And it was an incredible first unit.
That's cool. So before we get any farther into the story, being our first female service member on here and our first officer, I have to ask, what is it like? I've had some pretty really good friends that, or female enlisted, but I guess I've never really asked any of them like, what's it like being a female in the military when you're such a small percentage? It's got to be pretty different being on that side of things.
First, you notice it a lot more, and then you don't. I think initially when you're going through officer candidate school, or well, really starting officer candidate school, you have your own platoon. You're still integrated with everybody else, but you have your own platoon.
Okay.
Then when you get to the basic school, you're integrated with everybody. So my platoon was comprised of men and women, and maybe there was 5 females in my platoon, 4 or 5 of us, maybe.
Hmm.
I can't remember exactly, but you start to get integrated where you're like, well, there is not very many of us.
Hmm.
And this is a little bit different. And there's certain things that I don't see any difference because in my mind, like a Marine is a Marine and that is that. But there are certain things that when it comes to different, even just like grooming standards, like women's hair or women's uniform, that you can't always ask your peers because they're completely separate. Or there's stuff like you just don't know,
Yeah.
like vice versa. They don't know always about hair and nails and like some stuff, but I couldn't tell you more than, hey, get a high and tight and look over. So initially for like uniform inspections and stuff like this, when I was getting my uniform looked over, some individuals were like, is this right? I'm like, well, yeah, some things are, different. And then vice versa. I was looking over some of my junior Marines and I was like, I don't have this in my uniform. I need to like check the manual. So there's like little stuff like that. Then it got a little bit interesting sometimes when you'd be the only female in the room. And again, sometimes you notice it, sometimes you don't. And maybe sometimes there's a behavioral shift, but ultimately, once I met people in my unit, I was like, hey, come as you are. Like for me, yes, I'm a female, but I am like a ball of energy and I am talkative and I'm outgoing and here I am and like this is
Hmm.
who I am. And you don't have to really necessarily like it or be my best friend, but we're gonna respect each other. And if you're, you know, curse, you scream, you yell, come as you are, and that's you. Like
Yeah.
we're different, but we can still work and fire together.
Hmm.
But there's been times when it's, again, I don't even notice it. And there's times where I'm looking around, I'm like, oh man, like I feel super outnumbered. Or if I have like a certain question, like, with some of like the new like pregnancy rules or all this kinds of stuff, there's stuff that I don't expect my male counterparts to like have down to a T.
Hmm.
And that's just where I have to almost work that much harder on knowing all of these standards and rules, regulations, and all of the males, right? Maybe a little bit more
Yeah.
than some of the men do and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm filling in as acting first sergeant at my unit, and I got to shave the
Mhm.
end of the month and go in for my summer training. And I'm like, I should probably know this stuff because I'm headquarters company too. So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely being a grunt the whole time. There's a lot less that I know about that. So
Yeah. But
that's
other than
funny.
that, like I said, yeah, there is different things that come up. I know it's a hot topic people always want to ask about, but there's stuff that happens in every workplace based off of your gender and whatever. I don't think it's any different in the military.
Yeah. So, what's your advice to anyone thinking about joining the military and the Marine Corps specific, if you want to talk about that, and thinking about joining, and then we'll get into your advice to, junior Marines and service members.
I would say as a military as a whole, there's a lot of preconceptions that people have. I know I had it too. And so I'm in recruiting now. And I
Mhm.
actually ask people, when you think of a military individual, describe them for me. The majority of the time, they're going to say male, fit, someone that screams and yells and deploys and travels and shoots guns.
Oh, interesting.
Those descriptions aren't completely inaccurate. There's a lot of truth to what they're saying. However, my biggest thing that I like and like preaching really hard on is you're pretty narrow minded into what you're thinking and what you're saying. But that's what our brain does. Our brain processes and sees things and then makes quick analysis on what it is and then pieces it together. So, my biggest advice to someone who might be interested or hear more is like actually do your research and figure it out because there are a lot of misconceptions. For example, I was asked if I was going to LA when all the riots are going on. I'm like, no, just because I'm in the Marine Corps doesn't mean like all of the Marines are like going and doing this, right? But people also assumed, and I'll be honest, I did too, that I'm going to be like the movies. I'm going to be kicking doors down in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that is so far from the truth of what I actually do. I had no idea that we had lawyers, that we had band, that we had like dog handlers. I'm like, what? Like military police? Like, that's cool. We just have all these different opportunities for people that I didn't know. So, what I will say with that is come with your already understood ideas or thoughts of what you think the military is, but have an open mind to be able to absorb what actually the military has to offer, who the people are, and how we actually have an extremely diverse group of individuals that there's a place for everyone there now. And I say now because obviously we know throughout history the military used to be white males.
Mhm.
It's just history, and
Yeah,
we've been able to make leaps, bounds, and strides to where we are now. And that may be a majority of the force, but that's not all that there is. And so there's so many cool things that I think people should know. And in my personal opinion, I think everyone should serve to some capacity. If you're within standard, you're fit, and you're able, I think even serving 4 years in a military service will put you on a straight path to be successful in absolutely anything you do in life.
I 100% agree with that statement. Everything that I think I've been, given in life, it all funnels through, joining at 17 and getting started in my military career. School, bachelor's degree, and paid for, and there's been definitely trials and tribulations, missing my kids being born, one of them, missing first steps, probably about to have my third surgery. But I mean, overall, I've been required to stay physically fit, and it's good to be. It feels good, like you see, a lot of people are not, and it's nice to be just feel good, and you have that confidence built up in yourself when you're walking around, like knowing what you're capable of. And I don't think I've ever pushed myself to the extreme that you have in the training that you do for the bobsled team and things like that. That's got to be pretty crazy. But and I know, and I had my buddy Eric on, who was like a Green Beret and all that stuff. But I mean, just being a grunt, I mean, that pounds you in the ground big time, and it has not been easy, and it's just given me so much, a lot of perspective, I have so much perspective every time I see my kids, you know, doing anything, sitting in the backyard, seeing them play, or I used to coach my oldest son's little league. All that stuff means so much more to me because of the places I've been. It's pretty awesome. I'm so honored to have those feelings.
Yeah.
And of course, we're extremely thankful for the men and women who didn't get home to make it to enjoy those things, and which also makes it even more special for us. So
Yeah.
service is amazing, gives you so much.
It does.
Yeah, for sure. I did have an interesting conversation on my last podcast about it gives you a lot of leadership traits, but sometimes you got to turn them down a notch when you get in the civilian workforce. Maybe you'll find that later on.
I can see that.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right, so we're talking about why people join. What's your advice, when you're young and you're first getting, to your duty station and things like that, or maybe while you're at school?
So I obviously can't speak to the enlisted side as well. I haven't experienced it. My best advice for young officers, number one, come as you are. That's something that I just said, but I mean that wholeheartedly. Your Marines need an authentic leader. And that's one of the leadership traits that I look up so much is authenticity. Reason being is when you're able to be 100% yourself and lead the way you believe to, right? With following left and right lateral limits here, but
Yeah.
when you're able to be authentic and organic, your Marines respond really well to it. Again, doesn't mean they like it, but they know what to expect. You're able to be recognized for patterns of behavior, and your Marines and your work environment can function well. So I would say that come as you are, right? There's sometimes when you're a lieutenant and your ego is like, well, I got to be a certain way or I got to act tough or all this kind of stuff. It's like, show up as you are, which means like, hey, there's not a lot I know. Ask, be humble. What are all of these things? And that really leads me to the second point. I heard this all the time and I could not agree more with the statement. Lean on your senior enlisted leadership. When I went to the MALs, I had a couple gunnery sergeants and they knew that I did not know a whole lot. And I didn't try to hide that. And there was conversations when I would go straight to them like, Gunny, I need your help. I don't understand this. How would you approach the situation? Give me your feedback. Ultimately, they had been in 10 plus years. They know this MOS and they know this job better than anything. They've seen it all. And so it's this really interesting dynamic that people don't fully wrap their brain around of like you have a 23, 24-year-old that is in charge of someone who's served multiple years, combat deployments, all this stuff, and I'm in charge of you. Like that doesn't really always make sense. But you humble yourself in knowing I am the leader, which means ultimately the decision's mine. Responsibility falls on me. But as a leader, I want to be someone who's listening to what my team has to say because they know more than I do. And it can be a team decision, but ultimately I have to eat it and what it is, right? So I'm not letting someone walk over me and run me, but I'm also not going to act like I know everything and I'm just going to make decisions without involving my team.
Yeah.
And I think,
And your
yeah.
job is to collect as much information as possible to make a decision. And, obviously I've never worked with you or anything like that, but I can say that, me being at 20 years of service, 20 plus now, any officer that I've ever met that came in as a lieutenant with that attitude has been an amazing first lieutenant and captain. Just incredible. Yeah, you have all those skills that they've groomed you. You just maybe don't have the time unless you're like prior enlisted or something. Even then, you probably weren't enlisted that long. But yeah, that's I love hearing that. That's so awesome.
Yeah, and I say that in a way of like it's a partnership.
Mhm.
And same with your Marines. Yes, you're in charge, but I think the worst thing I've seen in leaders is just that power kind of go to their head and forget how to function as a team and as a unit. And it can be pretty destructive. And then the last thing I'll say is I don't like operating in fear, but I've seen people operate in fear of like worrying that they're going to make a mistake. There's like jokes about it, but like as a lieutenant, like you're going to make a mistake. And I've actually learned best from mistakes that I've made. I'd rather, again, take the initiative, make a mistake, course correct, and charge forward. 10 minutes, stay in the planning phase, not make a decision, not go after because I'm so worried that I want to get it 100% perfect.
Yep.
No, you don't want to make mistakes, but that's how you learn and you'll learn real quick. And I'll share this really small story that literally just came to my mind.
Yeah.
And I share this because sometimes people need like a little ounce of like humility. And this is what happened to me.
Mhm.
I was the S4 officer, which means I'm logistics and in charge of like everything, which means all these additional billets or whatever. And I had just 5 days under my belt, and I was reached out to by the civilian contractors, and they're like, hey, we're gonna do a power outage on Sunday, like, just want to give you a heads up, do we have a green light? And again, in my head, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm looking through sheets, they do this often. I talk to the guy, I'm like, yeah, why would I need to brief my bosses on that, right? Like, it seems like such a minor, insignificant detail. Do a 2-hour power outage, no big deal, sounds good. So I'm like, yeah, cool, authorize it. All of a sudden, that day comes around on the weekend, and my phone is blowing up. And I'm like, oh no, I was at church and I'm leaving. I'm like, what is going on? Like, my boss and my boss's boss is calling me. People are freaking out. And I didn't realize that was drill weekend for one of the reservist units. And our weapons are operated off of this belt that is run off of power. So this reserve unit squadron was not able to draw their weapons for their training where they needed to do qualification on certain weapons in the helicopters because the power was out and there was no manual override, which
Dang.
was a problem in of itself, which we
Yeah.
quickly identified, because if there was an issue ever in the past, like, or in the future that wasn't
Mhm.
like this and we lost power, like, you need to be able to,
Yeah.
like, anyways, I messed up bad. But instead of like being timid and all this stuff, I course corrected. I figured it out, and let me tell you, I never made that mistake again. But that was something that like haunted me 5 days in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get fired. I'm terrible. I'm the worst officer. Like, how could I do this? I thought it was something so small and insignificant. But I tell you what, I never made that mistake again. I
Yeah.
was like, I'll never be the highest one with information. I don't care how big, I don't care how small. It cost me nothing to fire off and send out an email just to make sure that everyone is tracking on this, even if I don't think that's going to affect and bother anyone else, because I could have caught it. Now, initiative, great. Took charge of something, skimmed over the information that I had. Cool. I made a mistake. You're going to make mistakes. Don't dwell over it. Take it, learn from it, and don't do it again. And I know I just told you a lot of time saying that, but I see so many people worrying about making mistakes that they kind of act kind of crazy and aren't able to actually get anything done. So last piece of advice to wrap that all up is have initiative. Know you're going to make mistakes, but once you make the mistake, don't freaking make it again. Like, it's not a mistake if you can learn from it and course correct, because that's how you're going to get better throughout your career. And I think everyone has a moment like that or similar
Yeah.
where they made a mistake and they're like, oh my gosh, that'll never happen again.
Yeah. It took me a while to learn that. I didn't have that break in college, and before I joined, I'm right out of high school, and obviously being a private's a little different than being a lieutenant, but it's a lot scarier to make mistakes. They're not big as yours though, but I left my rifle at the water buffalo one time. I literally made it 50 yards max, and I'm like, no, already gone. Different platoon had it. You're gonna pay for it. And then one time at a mortar range, I was the ammo bearer. So my job is to take the increments off, the charges. Less charges, it doesn't go as far and as high, right? More charges, it goes farther. So we were supposed to get it down to like charge 1 or 2 instead of 4. And I had the A gunner prepping rounds, and I prepped some rounds, and I trusted his rounds were right, even though it's my job, right? We get a fire for effect, and I'm like, why didn't those land yet? Luckily, the range is set up where they went too far. It just goes like too far and doesn't hurt anybody. But imagine that in, combat scenario. So yeah, I paid for that one big time.
You
But
do, and you
never did
don't
it
make it
again.
again.
Yeah.
You don't make that mistake again.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
doubt.
and we all have whatever story that
Hmm.
is. Yeah.
But yeah, it took me a long time to learn what you just said, so that's really good. Now I can do that, like, I'm at work or something, like, "Yeah, okay, I made a mistake, it won't happen again, I know now." So, yeah, but always be prepared, so hopefully make the least amount as possible. Yeah, that's cool, really glad you shared that. So you're at your unit, when did you start so the next kinda big thing coming for you, besides obviously moving up in your career in the Marine Corps and everything, you're in logistics. When do you end up finding out about the bobsled team and getting involved there? Like, what piqued your interest? How did all that happen?
What happened for me was I was that Division I college athlete and went straight to commissioned later on that September, I went to the basic school and graduated with golf company. And when you're at the basic school, you have so many tests that you have to accomplish and complete. And a lot of them are physically extremely demanding.
Hmm.
Endurance course, even land nav, like you're running miles and miles between points and boxes and stuff like that. So I felt like I was so focused on that my gym and other additional training was kind of in the back burner. Like everything I was doing was military focused, tactical athlete. Once I got to the fleet and I got here in California, it was COVID and everything was shut down. And there was a part of me that, again, back to what we were talking about earlier, is I checked in as the S4 officer where all my peers were filling lieutenant billets and on rotation for the MUs and UDPs for deployment. And I was quickly told, hey, of all the lieutenants here, everyone's going to deploy basically but you or go on rotation.
Oh man.
And I was gutted. Like, I
Okay.
was so upset. Again, I was like, I
Right.
worked this hard. I got stupid logistics, but I'm
Now
here.
I'm
I'm
stuck.
filling this, right? I'm filling this role. This is so important. And they're like, yeah, but you're not on cycle. You're not in a typical lieutenant position in billet. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, this can't be. And I needed something. And what I thought about the time was, okay, I want to keep playing sport to some capacity because I'm 23 years old. I'm still getting fit. Like my body, I'm getting stronger. I'm growing into it mentally. I'm getting sharper, especially after the basic school training and leading and, even more. I'm like, I can't be done yet. There's no way. So I was like, naturally, I was like, the Marine Corps has a softball team. This is perfect. It's not a massive commitment, this, that, and the other. I got so excited and we're in COVID. So it was shut down for a little bit. And I'm like,
Man.
no, I was like, you're kidding. So I was like, okay. And I was just like praying on it. And I was like, I need something. And that's when I had a contact at the bobsled team. She also played softball at the same place I did at George Washington.
Okay.
And she had just won silver in 2018 in Pyeongchang. And
Wow.
I remember a specific moment when I presented her an award on behalf of the softball team for the athletic department for her efforts. And from following her and all this kind of stuff, I saw that Bobsled was having an online tryout, if you will. Tryout isn't the right word because it was more of like an athlete screening. So think NFL and how they send people to the combine and they test like your bench press, your sprints, your broad jump, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
It's like an athlete profile. So that's what it was. Instead of doing that in person, which I would have never been able to do, it was online. And for me, it scared me in a positive way because I was like, I went from a softball athlete, really strong sprinter, to tactical athlete where I lost a bunch of weight. I'm not squatting as much, but I can ruck for miles, no problem. I can run 7, 8 minute
Endurance.
mile paces for miles. Like I'm good. To then now you got to try out for this bobsled, which is heavy sprinter again. I was like, no, I thought I would never have to deadlift for the rest of my life,
Mhm.
but in a good way. So all that to say, I didn't really tell anyone other than like my close family of like, I'm just gonna like see where I stack up as an athlete. Like I'm just generally curious. And I end up, like I always do, being a little bit bold and courageous and reach out to the coach, reach out to that athlete, had a couple phone calls and they were like, hey, you passed our initial eye test of you. We're going to invite you to come out for a 2-week tryout. And that was like the actual event.
Okay.
Well, then I was like, no,
How do I make that happen?
how does this happen? And again, praying on it, I'm like, the best case at this time was COVID. In the sense of COVID had people on port starboard, or if you came in with a close contact, you were on 2 weeks work from home. That was the standard practice. Close contact was like 10, 14 days. So I was talking to my command and I went to my XO the time and I just sat him down and I was like, sir, can I speak to you about something? And what people don't see in this story is that I had to prove myself as an officer before I was able to ask for anything. And
Mhm.
that's a part that I really want to highlight because when you tell stories that happen right over a long period of time, you just hit like the wave tops. So there's people been like, oh, well, I haven't been able to do that or da da da. Every situation's different, but I had to show as a second lieutenant I could operate in this captain's billet. I had to prove above my marks that I had this under control.
Mhm.
And it was because of that that I was able to ask, sir, could I take 2 weeks time off and go to this tryout in Utah and try out for the team? At the time, I was like, I don't know what's going to come of this, but if anything, it just means something to me as an athlete that I made it to even that level. And he was like, absolutely. He's like, bring your laptop. You'll work from there. It's as if, you had a COVID contact and let's see how it goes. So
That's
I
so
went to
cool. As a second
Yeah.
lieutenant, they let you do that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So again, I also credit that to not just me, but my Marines. My gunny was incredible. My Marines were even better. And they were like, okay, we can function for 2 weeks. And oh,
Hmm.
by the way, I'm making phone calls. I'm on there. I'm just not in person.
Yeah.
I think it says a lot about leadership and why that is so important. And I talk about all the time is my unit naturally was going to suffer with me being gone, but it was the Marines and people that are so high functioning that we operate in a military system where if your leader goes down, someone it's next man up, next man up, next man up. And I don't care what freaking rank you are, every Marine is a leader.
Yep.
Period. So it actually caused my Marines to step their game up and I think made them better for it. My own personal opinion and the growth that I've seen of them. Anyways, I go, I try out, do a sport I've never done before. I end up being extremely successful. I was one of 3 that made it past the first stage. They invited me back. I went back and forth for a little bit of time training. And that year I ended up winning 2 bronze medals,
Dang.
which was insane. And that's when we were like, oh no, what do we do with her now? And we just kind of lighted a fire. And there was no book on how to bobsled and be a Marine. There was
Yeah.
no platform or playbook. We had our all Marine sports teams, but this was different because this wasn't on behalf of the Marine Corps. This was on behalf of Team USA in the United States of America. And so I've been able to just work and function with my command. There's been times when I always choose the Marine Corps first, and it's been at a detriment to my sports career to include a deployment in the middle of season and coming home from deployment and going from Iraq to Canada and competing and having to figure it out. But I always choose the Marine Corps and I always will first. All that to be said about this journey, and the big point I want to nail home is majority of time there isn't a way because someone hasn't done it yet, but that doesn't mean it's not impossible. And the answer will always be no if you don't ask. And if people do tell you no, don't be butthurt about it. Like pivot and figure out a way to yes. And so, in all these examples, and again, as we skim over this, I built a case to where my boss could not say no. Sir, here's who's taking over this. Here's who's doing this. I will be on this call. I will be. Da, 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 da. Here's my plan. I'm coming to you with a plan, with my background of being able to say, hey, I'm reliable. You can count on me. Here's already how it's going to operate. Here's the things that I'm going to be doing. Will you sign off and allow this? And if it blows up in my face, I take full accountability and responsibility that you will judge me as if I was here against all my other peers, and there will be no difference in that. And because of that, I was able to have a couple yeses. There was also some nos that people don't see and just assume, but it's been an incredible blessing and something that I'm so proud of to have been able to represent the Marine Corps and Team USA as I've been able to compete and travel the world.
Man, that's cool. That's got to be so fun. Where all have you been with Team USA? Where have you competed at?
We've competed in Park City, Utah,
Nice place.
Lake Placid, New York, which is where our Olympic Training Center is. Lake Placid, people don't know it unless I tell them Miracle. That's where Miracle was in the 1980 games. People are like,
Okay.
oh, okay. Yeah, there it is. They were like, oh, I got it. In Canada, Austria, Germany, Switzerland. That's what I can think of off the top of my head. There's a couple tracks and there's one in Norway and in China. I wasn't able to go to China for reasons that make sense. But yeah, I've been all over Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, and it's been absolutely incredible.
Have you ever gone into a competition? I'm gonna guess you're gonna say after Iraq, but has there been more than one time where you came into a competition and feel like you wish you would have had more time to train up for it because you're a Marine?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I bet.
Because what people don't understand is the level of fitness that the Marine Corps demands of you is so different than bobsled because it's 2 different things. So we're like, oh, well, you're a Team USA athlete. You compete in a world championship. You should be able to do the Marine Corps physical fitness test. And I'm like, oh, I can. But a fitness test that says run 3 miles, do 12 pull-ups, and hold a 345-minute plank has athlete body A. Body A looks like more of an endurance, strength, but lean. Body B, bobsledder, asks you to drive with your legs a 400-pound sled on ice, moving it max speeds as fast as you can, hitting it, producing enough power, and then propelling it with speed 40 meters. And oh, by the way, you're competing against girls that weigh 185 pounds, which means I need you to be heavy. I need you to be strong. I need you to look like a freaking ox.
Yeah.
And I need you to move this thing. Athlete A and B don't mesh well and operate together. So in addition to that, the Marine Corps has height and weight standards, which aren't as big of a deal, but for preference. I'm 5'7", which means my max weight is 166 pounds. Well, as a
They want
bobsledder, when I started, I was about 150. I
oh
was
my
tiny. I was
they
the
want you to be like
smallest.
30 more pounds.
Yes. So I had to put on, and I got up to 170, and I was eating so much chicken, rice, and broccoli. I still to this day struggle to eat it. And I was eating and putting on all this weight, but what was happening is then when I would have to transition into the physical fitness season, right after season, so I would compete September through March, April train, May execute my physical fitness test. I broke my foot.
Oh,
I had a stress fracture that was a clean break in my foot because I was putting on so much weight and my body was doing so many like extreme things that it just wasn't able to maintain what I was asking it to do because it was just confused all over the place. And then as my Team USA athletes in March have all of April off to recover and spend with their family, right? While I'm grinding to drop weight and everything,
mhm.
they're starting straight away in May. I'm just now physically finishing my physical fitness test in body A and have to go all the way and start back over again where no one
Wow.
else had to do it. So it's been one of those things where it's daunting, it's very difficult mentally, and it's something as an athlete that like I truly don't wish upon anyone. So yes, that, and then time wise, I could never be gone as much as possible. My teammates live at the Olympic Training Center. They go to Olympic Training Center all the time.
Wow.
If it wasn't for competition or like a mandatory practice, I had to do it from home. And I did it after working hours. So I'd either wake up at super early in the morning or do it after work when I'm exhausted. When some of my teammates or competitors, that's all they had to do throughout the day. Hey, do this 3-hour workout. I don't have that freedom and flexibility. And goodness knows when you're going to the field and you have some stuff or you're on the rifle range or something like that,
Yeah.
it ain't happening. So
When you're already doing company or battalion or whatever PT or platoon PT
yeah.
on top of that.
Oh yeah. It's just a different field. So I say this, if it was easy, anyone would do it. If it was easy, it wouldn't be worth it. And that's why I ask people, what's your excuse? What's your excuse? Because I was able to do it. And trust me, I'm not that much different or special than you. I just have this willpower where I'm gonna not take no for an answer and
Yeah.
I'm gonna figure it the F out.
hmm That's awesome. That's it's a force to be reckoned with when you take that through the rest of your life, you know?
I don't take no and I don't take excuses very well.
Yeah. That's cool. Extreme ownership.
That's right. I have it right over there.
That's a great book. Great book. I was cool reading it because a lot of the stuff he's talking about, stuff that I'm like, wow, I already do that just because I've been in the military so long, probably. I don't know.
Hmm.
But and then, but then some other awesome notes to add on top of that, right? So yeah, that's cool. Well, wow, what a journey, huh? So you're still doing that. That's awesome. So going from there, kind of taking where your life's been, you decided to write a children's book. And
Yes.
yeah, so this was cool. I chatted with you about a little bit about it earlier. And so it's called If You Can Dream It, Be It. It's on Amazon and Endgame Press. It came out this last April. And what we talked about, you'll get into a lot more, but it's about empowering 4 to 8 year old children, that there's no limit to what they're able to accomplish. And I think this is the perfect spot to talk about that based on what we just talked about here. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about this book and why you did it.
Yeah, so here's a book right here. This is actually my most proud accomplishment. And I say that over the medals and things I've won because of the impact it's been able to have on people. So, background, I was in an interview and they were like, Riley, you've accomplished so much. What's your next goal? At the time, I was 26.
Mhm.
And I said, well, before I'm 30, I want to write a book. And I talk about this all the time because if you're going to take one thing away from this podcast, here's a gold star foot stop this. When you vocalize your goals and say it out loud to someone else or other people, it becomes so real because now you owe accountability for yourself and that person has accountability over you.
Yeah.
So if you want to do something and you keep it to yourself, it's like, okay. But then when I voiced it and the next day was in the news and I had said that to another person, if I don't accomplish that, I'm a liar.
Yeah. That's
What good is my
so true.
word? I said I was going to do something and now I'm not going to do it. Name 5 of your closest friends that lie, that don't show up for you when they say they don't mean timelines. Like, those aren't descriptors of people that you want to surround yourself with in your life.
Yep.
So why would you want to be or like yourself if you're going to do that? So, foot stop. There is so much power in like vocalizing your goals to other people. So I kind of let that slide for about a year because I was like, okay, I have time, right? Procrastination naturally. And I broke my foot and I was depressed. I was a week out from tryouts to try to make the national team for the second time. And I had a clean fracture in my foot and I was in so much pain. And instead of spiraling, I'm a big perspective people and I'm sitting there and I'm praying and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start writing that book now because I have to. I have to sit, I have to have my foot elevated and try to have a recovery instead of sit here and binge watching garbage Netflix and not doing anything for myself but feeling bad for myself. I'm going to go and pursue one of my freaking goals. I start writing. And when I realized I wanted to write a book, I instantly knew at that time I wanted to write to children. Why? The more podcasts I was doing, the number one question every single person asks is, did you know you always wanted to be a Marine? Or what was your journey coming to the Marine Corps? Like even us, like, right? We talked about that. And I kept hitting on it over and over again. I was like, wow, young Riley never saw a female Marine. I don't want any other young Rileys to operate that way, where they think that the Marine Corps is no place for them. At the time in the early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of women that were succeeding professionally at sports. I don't want that to be a case anymore. Or I don't want people maybe like me was really good in school, but like not maybe the best with grammar to feel like they can't write a book, right? Like don't disqualify yourself. So anyways, I wrote this book. I was able to work with a publishing company and the whole message and goal truly is realizing that there's no limit to what you can do in this world. And the fun part of it is she interviews people in her life that she looks up to, her father, her sister, her grandmother, other people. And I think that's so relevant in our lives is sitting down with people we love and having genuine conversation and learning from them, interviewing them in a fun way, right? Hey, tell me about your experience in the military. What was it like to do this, right? And if we have that like curious mind, there's so much beauty that comes from that learning process, but sharing memories generation to generation. So that's a part of the book. And then the end of it, without giving too much of it away, is a young child growing up, being able to accomplish all these things and going back into the classroom and teaching children as a proof source of like, hey, if I can do it, you can do it. If you can dream it, you can be it, you can become it, you can visualize it. And there's so much power in that. Hey, if Riley did it, I can do it. And so I love this book. Obviously, it's because I wrote it and I'm biased, but there is nothing that has satisfied my heart more than seeing young children's eyes and minds like light up when they're like, wait a minute, I can do that. I can do multiple things. Or a girl being like, wait, I can be a Marine. And I'm like, you can. And I can be a princess because I won a pageant and I have my crown. I have my crown and I have my cover. I'm like, these two can exist at the same time. Yeah, that to me has made it forever worth it. So my goal is to get this book into as many children's hands as I possibly can, not because I make a lot of money off of it, because I don't, but because it's about the impact that money can't buy, that can create maybe a core memory in those 4 to 8 year olds. So Riley, 20 years from now, when she talked to someone in the military, was like, oh no, I knew that women could be in the military. I knew one. I saw one. I talked to one. Just seeing what the domino effect that can have on society.
Hey, I don't think too many people have written books just for money.
Yeah.
Usually, I'm really passionate about something. I need to write this down, or this is a really interesting story I would like to tell, you know?
Yeah.
So, no convincing there. Like that, it just comes out, you know? That's so
Yeah.
cool. I'm excited. We recorded this too fast for anyone listening. Usually I get the books before I interview authors, but this time it didn't work out. So I'm excited to buy a copy of that. And that's going to be cool. I got a 3.5-year-old little boy and then 11-month-old boy, so they'll be reading it eventually. So that'll be cool. So who all has kind of helped you in this journey so far to get to where you're at? Obviously, you got to have family, friends, mentors, any partners, people that are helping you out. You know, we'd like to
There
hear
is
about
more than I
that.
could name. Yeah, there's more than I could name. And I say this all the time. I might be the one holding the trophy or the medal, but the community and tribe of people that actually deserve to stand there and get it is far more than I can count. And there's been so many people that have been so influential in my life. I like to call them my tribe. I know there's books and stuff written, and that's a big military word, but my tribe ultimately is also known as my circle of influence. People that are vetted, that I trust, that truly have say on my actions, thoughts, and behaviors, that I actually listen to what they're saying and I change because of it. Those are my people that I call when I'm doubting myself. Those are the people that I want to celebrate my highs with, but also know my lowest lows. And not everybody, but naturally my family's in it. My sister and my parents. My fiance Danny, who's a Royal Marine, who is just freaking insane. He's helped me with that. Man single-handedly is extremely responsible for my growth and development over the past couple years and becoming the woman that I want to be as I'm entering my 30s. Like, he has been the biggest blessing, but there's also been a number of women in service that actually also has been humble enough to help me and lift me up and pull me up. And then I belong to a couple women's groups. That's like the best thing that I've ever been a part of, is like female CEOs and entrepreneurs and executives and other different spaces and roles that we've been able to come together and uplift and support one another. And
Right.
how do we kind of, this new age of women working longer and having kids later and pursuing profession, how do we operate kind of in a different time? And then, not to make it about gender, I've also had leaders and males and Marines and coaches that my whole life were primarily males that grew me and blossomed me more into a woman than some women helped me do myself. So again, the list is so incredibly long. I
Yeah.
can't even come close to thanking everyone. But what I do want to say is I wish it wasn't just my name on certain awards or anything like that, because the amount of people that truly that belongs to don't often see credit, and it breaks my heart, but I try as much as I can to give back to them and let them know that I wouldn't be where I am. I am nothing without them. And
Hmm.
ultimately, my faith in Christ is my biggest platform and my biggest north facing compass that steers me and leads me.
Yeah. I think talking about that, you're talking about you break your foot gives you the opportunity to write a book, right? Like there's every time in my life, like I became a Christian at 13, and then I went through a divorce. I got married right out of boot camp like a crazy person, a lot of Marines. And that didn't go well. And then I kind of went living day by day and not, for the Lord anymore. Well, not that my faith changed, but life is
Mm,
full of distractions, right? And
yeah.
but every single time I faced any challenges, anytime anything's been taken away from me, something better was given to me. Every
Mm,
single time. And I think my favorite story is the story of Exodus and the Israelites going through the 40 years in the desert, and then they keep doubting God, and he's like, "Oh, I'll part the sea, I'll give you manna from heaven." They're like, "No, no, he's not gonna save us again." But
yeah.
every time. So I think finding those moments like in the challenges, I pushed through a lot of challenges. I mean, the end of last year, I had to switch civilian jobs, and right after I got ankle surgery, while I'm coming, like right after coming off a deployment. So I'm like, there's all these things going on, and you just kind of keep pushing. You have all that grit you have from your time in service. The people around you, like you're talking about, I don't have any trophies with my names on it, but I feel like I have my children and my wife, and those are for me, and my home, and like it's so blessed to have everything I have, and there's no way at all anyone can do anything alone. And
Yeah.
so I think sometimes you hear some songs that kind of people praise themselves, like I can do anything and all that. And every time I hear a song like that, I'm like, you wouldn't be where you're at singing this song with anyone listen to you unless someone else was there with you. Like, come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a great point to make. Your tribe's what gets you everywhere and all
Yeah.
that. So yeah. So we talked about your book. You've had a just wow, you push hard. That's so cool. I mean, we're talking professional athlete. I mean, you get any more professional than being on a team representing the United States. Marine officer, which is really freaking hard. And then you're writing a book, that's a lot of stuff. And that's really cool. And you should be very proud of yourself and everyone around you. That's really awesome. And
Thank you.
yeah, I think it's people that are pushing. Obviously, you do a lot of things because you enjoy it, right? And you like the challenge, but you end up coming back to like, let me write this book so I can help these young kids and just making an impact on the people around you, loving your neighbor. It's one of the most important things in the world. So that's super cool. Love that.
Yeah.
It's been really cool having you on. Really honored to, finally have a female veteran. I'm going to be reaching out to some of my friends and stuff. I just happened to reach out to you, and I really appreciate you coming on, So everyone, give Riley a follow, support her, go get her book for your kids, and let's help grow that next generation of strong young Americans. That'll be super cool. So maybe we'll have you on again sometime. It's been a pleasure. And thanks everyone for joining in. Just a reminder, bunker-bros.com. Get some merch, make a donation. We're building the only exclusive social media app for veterans that's out there. We want to get it to everyone sooner rather than later. So any help makes a huge difference. So we will see you guys next time.
Incoming, incoming, incoming.